All right, you guys, let's hop right in. If you've been following the Epstein files within the last 24 hours, you're beginning to realize that the chess pawns are moving on the board. This document right here, straight up from the DOJ website, seems to suggest that Epstein was still alive at least 2 years after they told us he was killed. This is an official FBI memo, heavily redacted, but in it, it says, on July 6th, 2021, it says, LOL Friday, I am on Arizona time through next week, so morning is same as you all Thursday. Epstein does live in Colorado, so he is 2 hours behind, though he has jumped on calls as early as 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the past. My only other thing Thursday is a debrief at 2 p.m. Thursday. So this was 2021, 2 years after he supposedly died. Now, many of you have already seen this document. I wanted to open the show with this for those of you that have not seen the document. We also have Hillary Clinton being deployed, the Hillary Clinton weapon, and I'll tell you why. And essentially, it's because she has now pretended to oppose Trump so that nobody will side with Hillary Clinton. This is classic right-left chess move. The giveaway is that the extreme polarity of the players on the chessboard, Trump versus Hillary, they had to pick someone that was the most divisive in order to make the magic work, because they know that no conservative will ever side with Hillary Clinton's truth, even if it's the real truth that Trump has redacted and covered up the Epstein files. Do you see how this works now? I hope you do. Each player works together so that they can save face, realizing that there is no true sacrifice for either side. This is how they maintain power. And only the two opponents know that they have worked together for the outcome of a draw so that they can save face in the eyes of their subjects. Wow. Now, this isn't the first time the awful left has appeared to be holding the banner of truth, but do not fall for the magic. And do not throw the truth out just because Hillary Clinton happens to be the one wielding it at this moment. She's actually correct. This is the largest cover-up in history. But in the cover-up, the Clintons' sins were covered up as well. So that's how the magic works. Now, if you're new to the channel, let's move on to other things. Then you won't know that we covered this trumpet flower. We're going to get into that next. That renders victims incapacitated. We covered this 6 months ago. I'm going to play an excerpt from this. We decoded a Fantasy Island episode about a rich billionaire with an island who would traffic and drug his victims, even had a madam like Ghislaine Maxwell. We covered all this. And now all of a sudden, the Epstein files are revealing that Epstein used the exact same flower to drug and traffic his victims. He was actually growing it right there on the island. Now let's play part of this decode that we did 6 months ago. And then we'll get into some more of these Epstein files. Let me check with you guys. Good morning. Welcome back to the channel. Now, for those of you that do come to the channel, you remember this Fantasy Island decode. It seemed random, but now we know it fits perfectly into the Epstein files and what they're showing us in terms of what happened. Let's take a look at this, you guys. To try to look at this, and I just never looked at it until recently. And so let's keep going. Let's get into this Fantasy Island. So one of you guys found that, remember the Epstein Island episode we did, which it was an episode of Fantasy Island that seemed like it had all these metaphors for Epstein Island. As these women were drugged and trafficked to rich billionaires, they were imprisoned on an island where nobody else had any jurisdiction. Remember all this? Well, here we go again, because one of you found that the ring that the billionaire used to drug the woman, there was literal drugs in his ring, and he dumped it into her glass. And then she became incapacitated and woke up on his island. Well, one of you guys found that there was an Illuminati playing card with the exact same thing. They even showed the glass with the card and the ring with the weird substance in it. Here it is, you guys. So great find, whoever found this. A ring full of some kind of paralytic put into a glass of wine. And it matches the scenario in this Fantasy Island, Epstein Island episode. Now, the question I have is, what is this weird vine-like thing next to it? And I've got to go to you guys for this because I don't know what that is. This weird vine, flower vine or something. Now, we've looked at some of this stuff over the years because these paralytic amnesiacs, they call them, this has become a central component in a lot of the survivor stories. They talk of something that they were given. Epstein's niece talked about this, that they're given some kind of amnesiac, she calls it. It makes them forget, and it like paralyzes them. And she was kept on low levels, doses of this stuff for the majority of her life so that they could immediately bring her back into a state of forgetfulness. And I think she even mentioned a particular substance, or maybe she didn't, I can't remember, but this is insane. Now, what is this weird purplish pink flower? And this is the problem with these victims that come forward. They can't remember anything, or it's very spotty, or they claim that the abuse was forgotten, or they had to find those memories again. And so therefore their testimonies aren't very solid, because how do you base a testimony off of, a person that's forgotten most of what's happened, unless you can link together factual evidence and create a case that way? Wow. So what is this pink flower? Let me go back in here and see if anyone knows what that is. And we can try to figure this out together. Now, I promised you guys I would look at some more of these episodes of Fantasy Island. Today, we're going to look at an episode where Rourke goes to battle with the devil, except his name is Mephistopheles. Now, we've heard this name before. We've covered here Nightshade, Belladonna. Let's look up those images. Belladonna flower images. Maybe. Trumpet flower, angel's trumpet. That's probably it. The angel's trumpet flower. Let's see if it has any amnesiac properties. Whoa, and amnesia of the episode. Disconnection from reality. Yep, I think this is it. The angel's trumpet. Whoa, good job, you guys. Good job. So, a genus of 7 species of flowering plants, nightshade, woody trees and shrubs with pendulous flowers, large fragrant flowers, angel's trumpets, adjacent to the nickname devil's trumpets of the closely related genus Datura. Wow. Contain tropane alkaloids, toxicity and deliriant effects. And they mention amnesia. These hallucinations are often characterized by complete loss of awareness that one is hallucinating. Wow, so you're stuck in a bad dream. Disconnection from reality and amnesia of the episode. So you forget the whole episode. That has to be exactly what this is. So you guys have now solved this flower. It's the trumpet, angel's trumpet, which even makes this scene even more cryptic, doesn't it? With Epstein Island and the angel's trumpet. Holy smokes. Now, let's get into this episode of Fantasy Island. And so there you heard it. 6 months ago. Now, where does the trumpet flower appear in the Epstein files that just were released a few weeks ago? Well, first, it was this forwarded email from a fashion designer. Let's take a look. Scopolamine. Now, we we had identified scopolamine as the active ingredient in the angel's trumpet flower in that decode. I'll put a link to it, but it's the same thing. He forwards this message to Epstein. He says a powerful drug growing in the forest of Columbia that eliminates free will. He sends it to Epstein. That was in 2015. Then I dug deeper and I found out that Epstein was actually growing this flower on the island. This looks like an email to maybe his gardener or something from Epstein to Mark. He says, Chris Tamunvi, pool trees, blocking trees, trumpet flowers, new palms, yellow vines, sod, dirt, main pool. So he's giving instructions to the gardener. So he was literally growing this stuff on the island. Then we get testimony from a victim who was literally drugged by this very flower. Here is the court document. Mr. Paglucha was essentially interviewing a victim here, and they talk about the trumpet flower. Let's take a look. He said, you also ingested something called angel trumpets when you were going to Mr. Epstein's house. Do you recall that? Answer was, that's a flower. I don't think you should ingest those at all. So the plot thickens, doesn't it? It's as if Epstein fashioned his island after the episode from Fantasy Island. Wow. Now let's switch gears here. We're going to go over one instance I found in the Epstein files of a mention of red shoes. Now, there were many instances of red shoes. There are a bunch of like images of red shoes worn by adults and children. There were several purchases of red shoes in the files, but this one, I believe, was the most cryptic one, because Epstein says to a redacted person, no red shoes. This was in 2014 on June 9th. No red shoes. Now, what could this possibly mean? And why is the person redacted? Now, if you don't think there was a cover-up, by definition, Trump has covered up the files through the redactions of people that were not victims. That is, by definition, a cover-up. So don't get lost in the arguments that people are trying to get you involved in. Stick to the facts. The facts are that rich billionaires have been redacted, and the Justice Department is giving us no excuse as to why that's happened. And so there you go. The Epstein files have been covered up. Wow. Now, let's get into this interesting document. This is a weird one because Epstein sends out this analysis or historical record that he puts together about people with red hair. And it seems to be a well thought out and written, essay, I guess you could call it, about people with red hair and the history of it, different cultures going back 50,000 years. Now, I don't know what to make of this, but there are some very interesting components to this that make you scratch your head. Again, I'm not saying there's anything bad about people with red hair, but I just thought we should go over this. Let's read this. This is from June 6th, 2013. And Epstein says, the first human redheads walked this earth about 50,000 years ago in Africa and then spread throughout northern Europe. The country name of Russia means land of reds, in honor of a red-headed Viking by the name of Rurik. Red-haired clowns have their origins in Russia. From the 1930s to the 1950s, in Cassville, Missouri, there existed a women's basketball team called the Redheads. For a while, they became the talk of the country and a much sought-after exhibition team compared to the Harlem Globetrotters. It is important to note that they were not natural redheads, at least not all of them. In the late 10th century, the fat of a redhead man was an essential ingredient for poison. Adam's first wife, Lilith, also always depicted as a redhead, is known to have refused to lie beneath Adam during sexual intercourse and stated, "Why should I lie beneath you when I am your equal, since both of us were created from dust?" At St. Paul's Cathedral in London, figurines tell the story of the fall in the Garden of Eden. Adam points one hand to the forbidden fruit and the other to a golden-haired Eve. Then the archangel drives them from the garden. Adam, with his fig leaf, loops his arm around Eve, who is now cowering and sporting a mane of long red hair. Wow. Similarly, in the paintings of the Sistine Chapel in 1874, Michelangelo's Temptation depicts a brown-haired Eve being handed a red apple by a red-headed, bare-breasted serpent woman. Satan manifested as woman, of course, carries red hair. In the adjacent fresco, Eve is thrown out of the garden with the shameful face and a twist of red hair. Eve's red hair is seen as the stain of skin, like the original Scarlet Letter. Later, her son Cain will bear the red hair and also a fall from grace. The first red-headed British monarch was a woman. Boudica was a Celtic warrior, was led her people, the Licenti, against the Romans in Christ's era in the 60s. Belief that redheads are witches is a folk belief in Germanic culture. From 1483 to 1784, thousands of suspected witches were nearly always stripped in search for marks of the devil. These included any abnormality, such as freckles, moles, warts, and birthmarks. Red hair was certainly considered an abnormality, considering the freckle factor for redheads. This was deadly and a shocking horror. Somewhere around 15,000 women were tortured and murdered, usually by burning at the stake or by drowning. The Egyptians regarded the color as so unlucky that they had a ceremony in which they burned red-headed maidens alive to wipe out the tint Claudie de Lis. British press recently reported that the MCIR redhead gene will be used in DNA testing to rule out or in if suspected killers in crimes scenes are redheads. This will narrow a search if the gene is found to a small percentage of perpetrators. The hope is that the next skin color and physical feature will be detectable. Wow. In Central Africa's Cameroon, redheaded albinos called Nguengueras are believed to also come by this color by menstrual intercourse. The UN and other world organizations have studied and advocated for their rights, as there have been allegations of the ritual murders in some regions of Africa. Archaeological digs in the Chinese desert of Taklamakan found mummified redheads dating back 3,000 years. So redheaded mummies in China. Wow. An Irish judge in 2001 fined a man for disorderly conduct, stating, "I am a firm believer that hair coloring has an effect on temper, and your coloring suggests you have a temper." Redheads have always been thought untrustworthy. Judas is most always depicted as a redhead, displaying the prejudice against red hair. The Romans kept redheaded slaves, and at a higher price. Adolf Hitler reportedly banned the marriages of two redheads as he feared their children would be deviant offspring. Wow. Beat you like a redheaded stepchild. This phrase was born out of the American South and implies the status of illegitimate offspring with a white master. At some point in history, Brahmins were forbidden to marry redheads. In France, to be redheaded is thought to be a fate so dire that some women have formed a proud to be red association. Redheaded children have been historically branded as offspring of unclean sex. This has earned them taunts such as red knob or tampon tops. The Bible states in 1 Corinthians 11:15 that a woman's long hair is a glory to her because it can be used as a covering. Yet in Song of Solomon 3:1, it states that it is an object that invites desire. I guess there is no losing. Bees are thought to sting redheads more than others. In Denmark, it is an honor to have a redheaded child. In Corsica, if you pass a redhead in the street, you are to spit and turn around. Wow. In Poland, if you pass 3 redheads, you'll win the state lottery. In Greek mythology, redheads turn into vampires when they die. During the Spanish Inquisition, flame-colored hair was evidence that its owner had stolen the fire of hell and had to be buried as a witch. Russian tradition declares that red hair is both a sign that a person holds a fiery temper and craziness. A Russian proverb warns, "There was never a saint with red hair." Folklore in Liverpool states that meeting a redhead at the beginning of a journey is terrible luck and bad omen. If you come upon one while still on dock or aboard the ship, you are smart to return home. In English and Scottish tradition, when the new year arrives, your first caller will bring you luck. Brunettes bring the best luck, blondes bring no luck at all, a widower brings bad luck, a redhead brings the worst luck. This first footing custom was so strongly practiced at one time that some homes would hire first callers. Aristotle was known to believe that redheads were emotionally housebroken. Wow. So, what was Epstein's fascination with red hair? Obviously, he was around a lot of people with red hair in the Epstein files. So you have to wonder what this is all about. I don't know the answers to that. Now, let's hop off of this. Well, let's check it with you guys, and then we'll get into a theoretical physicist that goes curiously by the same name as the husband of the journalist whose mother went missing. The same exact name, except it can't be the same person because the person we're going to read about now is a theoretical physicist. And the woman whose mother is missing, the journalist whose mother was missing, her husband is not a theoretical physicist, as far as we know, right? I mean, these files are crazy. Who knows what's really going on? But anyway, this person writes Epstein about a new theory on dark matter, and that's what we're going to get into next. Let's take a look. Dear Mr. Epstein, my name is Michael Feldman. Again, same name as the husband of the journalist whose mother went missing. He says, I'm a theoretical physicist proposing an alternative to lambda CDM that does not require the existence of the yet to be understood and even directly observed concepts of dark matter, dark energy, and dark matter. I do this by incorporating the observed features which we currently associate with these dark fellows into a reformulated understanding of inertial motion, as well as inertial frames of reference in empty vacuum. However, in order to reformulate inertial motion, as well as inertial frames of reference in empty vacuum, one must abandon the two most fundamental pillars of modern physics: Newton's first law and Einstein's special relativity. I'm sure you can tell at this point that my approach to solving these problems associated with dark energy and dark matter is rather unconventional and severely controversial. Given your own personal history of being open-minded to new and controversial scientific ideas and being a successful independent entrepreneur, I was hoping we could possibly speak further about the unbelievable potential involved with my approach, as well as the implications for the future of physics and science. I've provided links below to my publication for your own convenience. Whoa, Michael Feldman. Now, what does this suggest? Well, this suggests that Epstein was respected because of his knowledge about the sciences and alternative theories, right? Now, what else do we have here? Well, tomorrow, I found a cryptic email from Epstein in which he seemed to accurately predict the future, going all the way back to 2016. He even, and I'm going to give this away, I'm sure someone else is going to do a show on this now because they'll be able to search the year 2027. I searched the year 2027, and why did I do that? Because 2027 is the next new fire ceremony. So I actually found this by accident. I was searching new fire ceremony, then I searched 2027, and boom, there was an email with about 20 different predictions. The email was dated 2016, and Epstein mentions the year 2027 and about 20 different predictions, and the accuracy of the reality is chilling. You come to the conclusion, the only logical conclusion, that either he's a time traveler or his father, the devil, gave him the exact roadmap of what the technologies would be in the future. Now, I don't want to give too much of this away. I want to give this a full show tomorrow. So I want you guys to all come back tomorrow, and we will read the email and spend the majority of our time looking at the email. I could not even believe it when I found it. Now, I think, let's see, let's take a look here. What else do we have here? I do have a couple files we could go over. It's kind of a quick show today, but I do have a couple files that we can go over and some more information to kind of round out the show. Now, many of you will remember all of the work we did on Trump as Janus, going all the way back to 2017, 2018. I did a full video on Trump as Janus. Why did we call him Janus? Because Janus is Bifrons. Bifrons means two faces. It's the two-headed god. And I told you that Trump was Janus, and I told you he would be elected a second time, and we would see a completely different Trump, and that's exactly what ended up happening. Now, how did I know that? Well, that's Holy Spirit inspiration. After it's the Holy Spirit, he's directed us to look at certain things in decoding the matrix, and then everything comes full circle, right? And then it confirms itself over and over again. So here's more confirmation. Trump just launched Project Janus. Now, one of you sent me this update. This was in 2025. This was just last year. And it's essentially an executive order to deploy small mobile nuclear reactors up to 20 megawatts to military bases. Now, they're pitching this as defense. They're saying, hey, our grid, is, something that needs to be secure. And yeah, on the surface, you're actually right. But the problem is once the military bases have their own mini reactors, they're not going to share that power and energy with us if the grid goes down, right? They're going to have their own reactor. So this is how they could maintain control and power. Janus. And if the two-faced Janus doesn't give you a clue that our own military could betray us at some point, then I don't know what else will. Janus Bifrons. Biff. Back to the Future. Now here is a model of these mini reactors. They're carried around on what looks to be some kind of semi-truck trailer. It fits in the back of a trailer of a semi-truck, a flatbed. And again, they're pitching this as something where, they can maintain defenses and power in case the grid goes out. Well, what about the rest of us? What about the rest of us? Now, what else do we have here? Oh, Chris Rock appears in the Epstein files. I was looking up some of these celebrities. We'll cover this today as well. And Chris Rock appears. Apparently, he was invited to dinner, and he actually politely declined. This was back in 2014 after he was a convicted PDF file. Let's see here. And Epstein's arranging this meeting. It says here, this guy, let's see, who is this talking? Can't tell who's talking here. Let's do this. Okay. We're just going to search the page because it's easier to find. Do invite Chris Rock. So they're trying to get Chris Rock together with Woody. And what's weird about this is, again, he was already a convicted PDF file. And also, everybody knows that Woody is shady as well because he married his adopted child, who was a minor. So, what is going on here? Why are these people even in contact with each other? Unbelievable. Still waiting to hear back from both of these guys. I'm pretty sure Brenner will be there and should hear back by tonight. As far as Rock, don't know what his problem is. I know he adores and idolizes Woody. So Chris Rock loves Woody, even though he married his child. So hopefully hear back tonight. We'll keep you guys updated. Hey there, Jeffrey Epstein is asking if Chris Rock can come on Sunday. This is earlier in the email thread. Chris Rock Sunday night. And then later we find out that Chris Rock says he politely declines. Here's another Epstein file. This is Nicholas Jarecki. This guy makes movies. Okay. And in 2009, he says to Epstein, let's hang out. When are the bracelets off? What he's talking about is the handcuffs. Unbelievable. Now, if you hadn't heard, New Mexico is doubling down, and they've unanimously enacted the Epstein Truth Commission. If you didn't know, there was never any search warrant served at Zorro Ranch. So now this New Mexico rep, Andrea Romero, basically says she's going to go after and investigate all of the activities surrounding Epstein's Zorro Ranch. You guys, at this point, I don't even know what's going to happen. There are so many double agents in all of this. You know, I heard again Nancy Mace, who sounds like she's trying to do the right thing, once again saying there's nothing that, Laughing Lutnick and Trump have done, even though they were hanging out with a convicted PDF. Well, she says Lutnick was hanging out with a convicted PDF file and brought his family. I wouldn't do that as a mother, but the files do exonerate Trump. No, the files do not exonerate Trump. That's the problem. They do not exonerate Trump. So I don't even know if what's going to come of all this. I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's just, at this point, I don't know if I have too much faith that anything's going to happen, just because of the huge cover-up. So I'll put links to all this. Let me go back into the chat just for a bit and see what you guys are up to. What are your guys' thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Epstein's views about redheads, or what he was getting at there? Now, what's weird is when he sent out that email about the redheads, it was on June 6th. That's 66. We had already covered the bloodline of Cain. We'd already covered the first 6 generations mentioned in the Bible, from Cain's line and Seth's line, and how the names were almost identical. It was almost like they were doppelganger twins, 2 separate bloodlines. Now, don't get it twisted. Jesus came for all bloodlines if you choose to believe in him. This is why God protected Cain, even though Cain chose to murder his brother. God told Cain, you will now be a vagabond. You will go as a wanderer and a vagabond. But he also forbid anyone from killing Cain. He told Cain, you have a choice. You can choose good or you could choose evil. Sounded like God was saying, hey, you might be predisposed to something that might not be very good, but you still have a choice. And then we tracked the history of Cain and his descendants, didn't we? And we found that Cain's descendants became the other seed line that was opposing the 12 tribes of Israel, the seed of the woman. We found that the original prophecy of the Bible, the enmity between the 2 seeds, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that they would be at enmity with each other, and that absolutely happened, where the Canaanite bloodlines would battle the 12 tribes of Israel all the way down to the age of Jesus' age, when he actually called out the other bloodline. He said, "You are of your father, the devil, the Pharisees, the first murderer." So at the end of it, we see that God's prophecy came true, that they were at enmity with each other. But again, the wheats and the tares grow up together, because you can't pull them apart till the end of time. Cain was part human. This is probably why God spared him, to give him a chance to choose good or evil. And Jesus was the great arbitrator. If you choose him, it doesn't matter your bloodline, you're saved. So I wanted to put all that out there, just in case people thought I was picking on redheads. Of course I'm not. Okay. But you can imagine that maybe some of that bloodline is what's ruling our world. Those are the people that chose evil, right? They chose evil. So, yes, the Nephilim are said to look like clowns. Yeah, so that kind of fits into what we were talking about. There has been a seed war from the Jump Street. Now, we did an exhaustive investigation into the Bible years ago, probably about 10 years ago. We did this video, and I went from Genesis all the way through the Old Testament. And I literally tracked the bloodline of Cain. I'm not just saying that Cain became the bloodlines that oppose the seed of the woman. I actually proved it by tracking all the bloodlines. And believe it or not, the book of Numbers absolutely is important, because it actually shows the bloodlines. Without Numbers, you can't make the connection. You know, where it says so-and-so begat so-and-so and so-and-so begat so-and-so. Well, all of that was helpful in my research, and we showed that. We even tracked it to the pinch point, which was the flood, and then it leapfrogged over the flood, because there were giants on the earth after, in the days of Noah and after, Genesis says. And we tracked it as it leapfrogged over the flood, and then there were more Canaanites and bloodline of Cain that again opposed God's seed of the woman, the 12 tribes of Israel. And it's pretty easy to understand once you sit down and think about it. God made his covenant with the seed of the woman. That was the 12 tribes from which Jesus would come. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, that was one of the 12 tribes. And he made his covenant with them, which was an echo of his original covenant with Abel. This is why Abel sacrificed the lamb. This is why he gave his offering as a lamb, because Abel was the seed of the woman, and Cain was the evil twin brother, if you want to call him that. They were not of the same father. Well, God then continued that sacrifice of the lamb for sins with the seed of the woman. Who opposed the seed of the woman? The Canaanites. Why do you think they called them the Canaanites? And all the other ites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, they were giants. The 12 scouts went into the land of Canaan. They came back and they said they were giants. It all makes sense when you sit down and think about it. When you shed away the lens that we've been given to see this through, the lens of organized Christianity, which hides these facts. They don't want you to know this. They hide all this. They downplay it. Okay? So it's important to know this, not to judge people for what bloodline they're in, but it's important to know how the power structure works. Okay? That's what's important about this. So, God did not require the sacrifice of a lamb from the Canaanite tribes. They did not have the same covenant. They were doing other things. They were doing the bad part. They were sacrificing to Baal. Okay? So, all right, that's just a little Cliff Notes version of about a decade of research. Now, you can go back if you want to do a Bible study. I recommend it. And don't even watch my video on it. Just do it yourself. Track the bloodline. Make yourself a flow chart. Look at where Cain, first just start with Cain's bloodline. That's in Genesis. And draw yourself a flow chart. So draw yourself a flow chart. And I recommend, you're going to need a whole wall to do this. Get yourself a whiteboard. Start on one end and draw really, really tiny, because you're going to need to draw tiny. This would be the best Bible study ever, because it helps you understand what we're dealing with here. And once you finish this flow chart, you will see that you've been lied to by organized religion. Nobody wants you to do this flow chart. Here's how you do the flow chart. Start on the left. And the first thing you write is the first prophecy in the Bible. There shall be enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. The serpent will hit her in the head, or in the heel, and she will hit him in the head, or crush his head. Okay? Write out that verse. Then directly after that, write Cain and then write Seth. Why Seth? Well, Abel was killed. Now, if you want to get more detailed, you can start with Abel, but then you have to basically cancel Abel out because he was killed by his brother, right? Seth replaced him. So if you just want to jump to it, just write in Cain and Seth. Then you write their children. You write Cain's children, and then you write Seth's children. And what you'll see is you can actually connect the 6 children. They have almost the same names. There's a Methuselah. There's 2 Lamechs. There's 2 Enochs. 66. This is where the original 66 came from. 6 on each side. And then after that, this takes you into the book of Numbers. And then you follow Cain's line and you write it out. And then this is where you're going to be doing a lot of writing. Then you look at Seth's line. And that Seth's line will take you to the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, it'll actually take you to Noah first. Then from Noah, it takes you to the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. Cain's line actually takes you to, like, I think it's a wife of Ham or something. Okay. That's how it leapfrogs over the flood. Then from there, we get Ham's line. We get Nimrod. We get Cush, Japheth, and Canaan. Then we see that Canaan was cursed by Noah. There's more enmity between the 2 seeds, right? Noah, pure line. Canaan, unpure line. Cain line. Canaan, cursed. Then that you draw all that out, and then it takes you to Mizraim, which was Canaan's brother. Mizraim is original Egypt. So now we're down in Cain's line. The first time that Egypt is mentioned in the Bible is the word Mizraim. Mizraim translates to the word Egypt. That's the first time it's mentioned. That then takes you to all the pharaonic bloodlines. Okay. So you got all the pharaonic bloodlines coming out of that. From that come the Philistines, which were giants. From that comes Og and Bashan and the man with 6 fingers and 6 toes. All the Amorites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, all of them that battled the 12 tribes of Israel in the Seth line. So so people come on here sometimes and they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about because I sat down and did the study. I did the study myself because I had to see. I was like, there's no way. But then there is a way. And it's actually absolutely true. So then you've got the Pharisees, which were from the pharaonic bloodline. Same exact spelling. Pharisees, Pharaoh. And Jesus called them out. You are of your father, the devil, the first murderer, which takes you all the way back to Cain. So that's just off the top of my head, you guys. Pharaonic Pharisees. Phar. Far. So, okay, I'm back. I just went crazy for a second. All right. Serpents, yes. Spiritual wickedness in high places, yes. Vipers, brood of vipers, yes, he called them. Serpents. You have Nephilim genes in the animals too. That's why they're clean and unclean. I think you might be right about that. I don't know that, but I can tell you that my belief system is that the dinosaurs, I know a lot of people don't believe in dinosaurs, but there there are somewhat intact skeletons and discoveries being made every single day when it comes to fossils. Okay. So I believe that those were genetic aberrations that were created by the fallen angels who went into the daughters of men before the flood. This all happened before the flood. There were dinosaurs before the flood. And essentially what happened was they created the dinosaurs so that they could have food. Because here's the thing. The book of, I don't know if it's the book of Enoch or in Genesis, it says that when these fallen angels mated with women, that they consumed all of the acquisitions of men, and then they begin to consume men as well. That's in the book of Enoch, actually. So essentially, they needed some game because these were giants. They needed a lot of food. They consumed men. They consumed the things men made. And then that's probably where they went into the dinosaurs. So you're probably asking, okay, well, how is it that dinosaurs are millions of years old? Well, there's a couple of things that could have happened. One, the dating for the age of dinosaurs is off, and it was thrown off because the whole world was basically put into a flood. Let me give you an example, okay? Right here on my property, if I dig in the ground, I see rocks from 3 different eras. You would think that they're millions of years apart in age, but they're not. I see solid rock. Then I see a rock that's kind of in the middle. It's kind of light. Like I can pick it up and it's not very dense, but it's the same exact color as the other clay, which is super solid and dense. And then, of course, you get just regular clay that turns into powder in your hands. But that in-between rock, it's like a light reddish rock, and it's got no density to it. Okay? Well, time can speed up, in effect, when you have immense pressure, large amounts of water over rock and things like this. Now, the other theory could be that maybe when the ark rose above the surface of the waters, maybe God took them through some kind of time portal. Now, it says 40 days and nights, but hey, you never know. What if that was 40 days of God's days, thousands of years, instead of one day in human days? And God took them through a time portal. He's God. He can do anything. Now, these are just theories. I don't know any of this. I just like to use my free thought to try to figure out how all this stuff happens. And guess what? If it was thousands of years instead of 40 days and nights, maybe that's how all flesh was destroyed, because nothing could survive elevated waters like that for that long, right? So just a thought. All right. I had a vision the other night of, okay, you know how they depict, the grok symbol? Let's take a look at it before we get off of here. Grok logo. The grok logo essentially is the interstellar black hole. Okay, here's the comparison between the two. Grok symbol is the interstellar black hole. And in this is the black hole being depicted here. Let's click on this so we can see this better. What you have, they call this the singularity inside here. But along the edge of this, in the movie Interstellar, they fly their craft along the edge of this. And as they begin to enter the singularity, they speed up and then they pass through it, right? This is the typical black hole. Now, what is this vision that I had? Well, the vision that I had was that the ark was inside here. And essentially, what could have happened, is when they built the ark, it was inside of a portal. And that's what took Noah and all the rest of humanity and creation inside of the ark and took them through to the other side. This is why it didn't leak, it didn't sink, it floated above the waters. I mean, think of everything that could have gone wrong. Tumultuous storms, fountains coming up from the deep. At any point, this thing could have flipped over, but maybe they were inside this bubble. Now, there's some truth to this. Smaller renditions of this are said to house what they are telling us are UFOs. They say that they exist in some kind of space-time continuum, in some kind of a bubble that has different physics than our reality. And this is how they're able to achieve such high speeds and how they're able to turn very quickly, because without being torn apart, without having any kind of drag or resistance. This is how they're able to go under the ocean and move through oceans at very high speed. It's because the laws of physics inside the bubble are different than outside. There's no drag, there's no resistance. So there's something to this, possibly. Again, I don't know this, but I had a vision of this not too long ago that I wanted to share with you guys. So, yes, it looks like Saturn, doesn't it? The time trap, Kronos. Whoa. The fruits and vegetables were bigger than the people carrying them. You must be talking about Numbers 13. Yes. They came back. The 12 tribes of Israel came back from the land of Canaan, carrying what they called the pole of Eshol, was what it was called. And they had grapes, figs, and pomegranates. Hey, if you ever want to do an interesting biblical diet, get grapes, figs, and pomegranates. I tried it once, and it was amazing. But anyways, the fruit was so big, it seemed to be genetically altered from the land of Canaan. It was supersized. And think about this. If they could supersize fruits, why couldn't they supersize a reptile like the dinosaurs? Same thing. Anyway, the 12 tribes came back and they reported on what they saw. And they said, this is in Numbers 13, they said, we were as grasshoppers in their eyes and each other's eyes. They saw each other as grasshoppers and they saw them as grasshoppers. Or they were seen as grasshoppers or felt like grasshoppers. Now, we did a whole study on grasshoppers because amazingly, grasshoppers have what's called an ocelli. They have a third eye in the middle of their forehead. And we compared that to Alice in Wonderland syndrome, where everything seems very tiny. You feel tiny, your hand feels tiny in front of your face. Objects that are within reach feel like they're all the way across the room. It's called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, and you have to wonder, was the land of Canaan the original Alice in Wonderland? An alternate frame of reality? Hard to tell, but very weird nonetheless. The Nephilim red hair. Yes, we talked about that a little bit earlier. All right, you guys. Well, I guess I'm going to pop off here. I like having these free discussions with you guys. Amazing. We will be back tomorrow with how Epstein literally predicted the future. Has anyone covered this yet? Let me ask that first. Has anyone covered how Epstein predicted the future? Because I found it with my research, but I don't want people to accuse me of stealing their work. Ketamine causes Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Wow, I did not know that. No, I developed Alice in Wonderland syndrome naturally at the beginning of puberty. And I think I had some kind of a fever or something. And it happened to me pretty often for several years and all the way into adulthood. So I experienced Alice in Wonderland syndrome. So, looking glass, says Sheldon. Now, what is the connection between the ocelli, the third eye of the grasshopper, and Alice in Wonderland syndrome? Okay, are you ready for this? So, they say that Alice in Wonderland syndrome is caused by a virus in the brain, is what they say. I don't believe that cover story, but that's what they say. It all goes back to the pineal gland, which regulates light. They say it has something to do with how light enters the eye. which is ultimately, wow, this is crazy. The light entering the eye actually regulates the circadian rhythm. Not cicada rhythm, the circadian rhythm. What is the circadian rhythm? It's the land of milk and honey. Serotonin and melatonin is what regulates your circadian rhythm. Now, it's interesting that cicadas are a kind of grasshopper. They come out like clockwork in these rhythmic cycles. The land of milk and honey. Serotonin is white. Melatonin is dark. The serotonin is dominant during when you're awake, and the melatonin is dominant during the times you're asleep. One rules the day, one rules the night. Milk and honey. Whoa. Mind blown. So we did a full study on that years ago, if you're interested in checking that out. So far, no coverage on time travel. Did we cover that already? I think we did. Oh, you're answering my question. Okay, good. All right, so more info on Jeffrey's magic mirror. Oh, he had a magic mirror, huh? Yeah, they say they did that. Hold on. Let me take some notes here. Magic mirror. Yes, they're saying that Alice in Wonderland syndrome is linked to Epstein-Barr virus. Oh, the Epstein connection. Good one. Yes, I already looked up Tom Hanks, Cheryl. Did not find anything. Either they scrubbed it or whatever. Yep, the Honey Milk Ranch. Troy. Yep, that's what I named it after, the Bible. The land of milk and honey. Outside of the beast. A portal. Melatonin could trigger DMT-type hallucinations. Hey, let's look at the ocelli of a grasshopper. Ocelli grasshopper. It literally has a third eye. Images. Diagram. Diagram. Here it is. Wait. Okay, here it is. Doesn't show us very good, but ocelus. And it's literally in the middle of the forehead of the grasshopper. It's got to be a better image of this. Here it is. The medium ocelus. There are also two near the top here as well. But the median ocelus. And it makes you wonder, now that I've described to you the land of milk and honey from the land of Canaan, right? That's where they were. Melatonin, serotonin. Ready for this? Do you want to know what the pole of Eshol was representing spiritually? Now, all this really happened, but God is amazing because real life situations manifest out of these truths. It's almost as if our reality was constructed to mirror another reality. Now, what am I talking about? What is the pole of Eshol? Let's look it up. Let's finish the show. Eshol. Let's finish the show up with this because we had figured out what the pole of Eshol represented. Here's a good image of it here. It was a pole with grapes, figs, and pomegranates on it. Now, track with me here because this is very important. Okay, this is these 12 tribes just returned from the land of milk and honey and the Canaanites, right? They said we were as grasshoppers. So we identified that grasshoppers have a third eye that regulates milk and honey. Okay. Now, watch this. What is the pole of Eshel? I think we found it, and it has to do with an eye as well. Diagram, eye, hyaloid canal, artery. Okay, this is the human eye. Now, this is nuts. And inside, there is a pole, the hyaloid canal, which has an artery in it. But when you're born, the artery disappears, and there's just this valley or this stem running through the center of your eye. Now, what was the original purpose of the hyaloid artery? Well, the hyaloid artery provided nutrients and blood flow to the lens while you're in the womb to develop the lens of your eye. That was the purpose. Once you're born, the artery disappears. But what's left in the middle, you ready for this? What's left of the artery in medical terms is called a remnant, just like the remnant of the 12 tribes of Israel. And this remnant causes floaters. The floaters you see in your eye are most likely caused from the remnants of the hyaloid artery. You can look it up yourself. So, if this is the pole of Eshel, Casey, where are the grapes, figs, and pomegranates on the pole? They're sitting in this tree, the retina. What am I talking about? Well, here we go. Now, all of this is the body code. We'd done deep dives on what we called the body code because our human body reflects things in the Bible that nobody could have known when the Bible was written because they didn't know what a rod, cone, bipolar cells, ganglion diagram. Here are the grapes, the figs, and the pomegranates sitting on the pole of Eshel in the tree. The rods and cones are the grapes. The bipolar cells are the figs, and the pomegranates are the ganglion cells. Now, there are better images of this. Let me find, because that's what they've done is they've dumbed down the images. But when you actually look at what they really look like, they literally look like the 3 exact fruits named in the Bible. I couldn't even believe this when we found this. This was about 10 years ago. Let's see. Let's find one that looks more accurate. Grapes, figs, and pomegranates on the pole of Eshel in the tree. Now, Casey, what's up with this tree? Well, this is one of the trees of the knowledge of good and evil. It's in your eyes. So, one eye is evil, one eye is good, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is why Jesus said, if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Why did he say that? Because your right side of your body is controlled by the left side of your brain. The left brain is the science part of your brain, the bad part of your brain. Our whole body is a tree. We're in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The right side of your brain, which controls the left side of your body, that is the part of your brain where you believe in God. This is the body code. Wow. So we've got third eyes. We've got the eyes in your brain, in each side of your body. Well, Casey, where are the 12 tribes? Ready for this? 12 intercranial nerves. You have 12 total nerves that control all of the senses of your body. There are 12 pairs, 12 on each side, that control how you smell, what you see, what you feel. These are the 12 tribes. They go from the 12 ribs, which is the beast, which is the physical, and they go up into the 12 nerves in your brain, which is the spiritual in God. You have to go through the cross to get to God. What is the cross? It's the crossing optic nerves. The optic chiasm. Jesus is in the middle. The pineal gland forms his head visually. Again, all of this really happened, but we have a mirror of it in our flesh. The Word became flesh. Look at the pathway of light as it comes into your eyes. It crosses in the middle. So, you're stuck in the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Well, you go to the cross. The image literally crosses through. Everything's reversed. It ends up in the visual cortex, in the back of the brain, which is the arbor vitae, which translates to the tree of life. To get to the tree of life, you have to come out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Where did it go? You have to come out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil through the cross to get to the tree of life. God is amazing, isn't he? And if this doesn't help people have faith, I don't know what will. It's all real. Now, a lot of you wanted me to focus only on the body code. Once you saw the body code, you said this is all we should be talking about, and I agree with you. But the thing is, unless you see the rest of how our reality has tricked us, the right-left paradigm, this is where the right-left paradigm comes from. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is how the devil deceives us. He keeps dividing us into right and left and red and blue. And we can never get on the same page and realize that the devil rules both sides of this tree. He rules both sides. The answer is in the middle. Jesus Christ. We go through the narrow gate to the other side. The tree of life, where there's unity. There is no choice anymore. The tree of life is one. I hope this helped some people to realize what's going on. All right, you guys, we just went crazy for a while. I say crazy facetiously, but really it's just Holy Spirit inspired. No show notes, just going back to everything we've covered. And I hope that it inspires people to give their life to Jesus Christ, to understand that it's not all just gloom and doom, but you have to see the gloom and doom in order to find your way back to Christ. Because if you don't think there's a problem, if you believe the false prophet that, oh, we're in the golden age, things are going to be great. If you believe the false prophet, then you'll never give your life to Jesus because you think, hey, let's just keep going the way things are going. I got a 401k, I got this, I got that, things are going to be great. And people don't realize that they need Jesus Christ because this kingdom is built on sinking sand. You think you have a future in it, but you really don't. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. There will be sorrows. There will be gold and silver growing rust, and moths destroying people's treasures that they've built up instead of building up their treasures in heaven. So that's how it all ends, you guys. I love each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Take care.